down.
For decades, Dee Wallace was one of the most familiar and beloved faces in Hollywood. Audiences around the world adored her warmth, her radiant smile, and her ability to bring heart and humanity to every role she played. From her unforgettable performance as the loving mother in E.T. the Extraterrestrial to her powerful turns in horror classics like Cujo and The Howling, Dee became both America's sweetheart and the Queen of Screams. She represented strength, compassion, and a touch of vulnerability that made her one of the most versatile actresses of her generation. But somewhere along the way, Dee Wallace seemed to disappear from the spotlight. The actress who had once ruled both film and television screens all but vanished from mainstream Hollywood, leaving fans wondering, what the hell happened to Dee Wallace? Behind the scenes, the story of her disappearance is far more complex and emotional than most realize. It's a tale of loss, reinvention, and spiritual awakening. Dee's journey took her from the glitz of Hollywood's red carpets to the quiet, introspective world of healing, teaching, and self-discovery. After years of struggling with personal tragedy, industry rejection, and the harsh realities of aging in show business, Dee Wallace chose a different path, one that shocked many, but ultimately gave her peace. Now, decades after her Hollywood peak, Dee's life stands as a fascinating story of transformation. What began as a dazzling career filled with success and fame turned into a deeply personal mission to heal herself and others. But how did the star who once defined an era of family cinema end up walking away from it all? Let's uncover the emotional, inspiring, and sometimes heartbreaking truth behind what really happened to Dee Wallace. Before she became one of the most recognizable faces in film, Dee Wallace was simply a small-town girl with a big dream. Born in Kansas in 1948, Dee's early life was humble yet filled with determination. Her mother was a schoolteacher, and her father worked hard to provide, but their home was marked by emotional struggles. Her father battled alcoholism, a shadow that left deep marks on Dee's childhood. Yet even in those difficult years, she found solace in imagination and creativity, often performing for family and friends long before Hollywood ever came calling. Dee attended the University of Kansas, where she studied education, but her passion for acting refused to fade. She eventually made her way to New York City, where she began her career performing in small theater productions and commercials. Her radiant presence, kindness, and emotional authenticity set her apart from the rest. It didn't take long for casting agents to notice the spark she carried, a blend of innocence, vulnerability, and inner strength. By the late 1970s, Dee's career began to bloom. She landed roles in The Stepford Wives and The Hills Have Eyes, proving her ability to balance both horror and heart. But it was her role in Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1982, that made her a household name. As the loving single mother of Elliot, Dee delivered a performance that was both grounded and deeply moving. The film became one of the highest-grossing movies of all time. And suddenly, Dee Wallace was everywhere, on talk shows, magazine covers, and the silver screen. What made Dee special wasn't just her acting talent, it was her genuine warmth. She had a rare ability to make audiences feel safe, even in terrifying stories. Films like Cujo and The Howling turned her into the scream queen of the 1980s, but unlike others in the genre, her performances always carried emotional depth. Whether she was battling a rabid dog or comforting a frightened child, Dee Wallace made it feel real. However, success in Hollywood is often fleeting. Despite her immense talent, Dee found herself typecast in roles that limited her range. Casting directors saw her primarily as a mother figure or horror heroine, and the roles she truly wanted, the ones that would challenge her emotionally, were given to younger, newer faces. Still, she kept working, showing remarkable resilience in an industry that often discards women once they reach a certain age. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Dee continued to appear in films and television, maintaining a steady career even as fame began to fade. But beneath her professionalism, she was battling an inner storm. Personal heartbreak, professional disappointment, and the feeling that Hollywood no longer saw her the way it once did. This was the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would force her to confront her past rediscover her identity, and eventually walk a very different path from the one she had imagined when she first stepped into the spotlight. The woman who had once played the loving mother to millions of viewers was about to find out what happens when the applause fades and how to rebuild her life from the silence that follows. As the glow of E.T. began to fade, Dee Wallace found herself at a crossroads that would test her spirit like never before. She had become a household name, the warm, protective mother whose face was forever tied to one of cinema's most magical moments. Yet behind the bright lights and Hollywood smiles, the industry that had once embraced her began to turn a cold shoulder. Typecasting became her worst enemy. Casting directors couldn't see beyond her role as the loving mother. To them, she wasn't a leading lady or a complex character. She was the mom from E.T. For Dee, this was heartbreaking. She had dedicated years to perfecting her craft, studying under some of the best acting teachers, and giving her soul to every role. But as Hollywood's trends shifted toward youth, glamour, and big-budget blockbusters, Dee found fewer doors opening. "It was like I went from being everyone's favorite mom to being invisible," she once admitted in an interview. The offers that did come were often in low-budget horror films, a genre she both loved and resented. While it kept her career alive, it also boxed her into a narrow identity she couldn't escape. Financial stress began creeping in. The royalties from E.T. had long dried up, and the consistency she once enjoyed vanished. There were months when work was scarce and she had to rely on smaller TV appearances or voice work to get by. But it wasn't just her career that was faltering. Her personal life began to unravel as well. Dee's marriage to actor Christopher Stone, her co-star from The Howling, started to show cracks under the pressure of career disappointments and constant financial strain. The couple had once been the epitome of Hollywood's hard-working duo, but years of uncertainty took their toll. "We were both struggling to stay relevant in a world that had moved on," she said, recalling the tension that grew between them. Despite the love that held them together, life's hardships often overshadowed it. And then, tragedy struck in the cruelest way possible. In 1995, Christopher Stone suddenly passed away from a heart attack. Dee was left shattered, a widow, a single mother, and a woman trying to rebuild her life while carrying immense grief. She described that time as a black hole. Days when she couldn't get out of bed, when even the thought of acting seemed impossible. Her daughter Gabrielle became her anchor, the one reason she forced herself to keep going. Hollywood wasn't kind during this period. While some peers reached out, many simply moved on. The industry has a short memory, and for Dee, it felt like she had been erased. Projects fell through, agents dropped her, and she found herself in a kind of professional purgatory. It was a far cry from the days when Steven Spielberg had called her one of the most authentic actors he'd ever worked with. But despite everything, the grief, the rejection, and the fading fame, Dee never gave up. She turned inward, exploring spirituality and energy healing, searching for meaning beyond Hollywood's shallow walls. Acting had been her passion, but healing became her purpose. She started attending workshops, learning about self-love, and eventually began teaching others how to reconnect with their inner strength. Still, the shadow of her past followed her. Many fans didn't know the pain she carried or the silent battles she fought just to stay afloat. She once confessed that she would sit alone in her living room at night, watching E.T. not for nostalgia, but to remind herself that she had once made something beautiful, that she was still capable of greatness. By the early 2000s, Dee was no longer the star of blockbuster films, but she had become something more meaningful, a survivor. Her journey from Hollywood fame to quiet resilience was far from over, but the cracks that had once broken her were now letting the light in. She was ready to rebuild, not for fame, not for validation, but for herself. As the years passed, Dee Wallace's life took a profound turn, not through Hollywood scripts or red carpets, but through a deep spiritual awakening that would redefine her entire existence. After the devastating loss of her husband, she could have easily faded into obscurity, another name in the long list of forgotten stars. But instead, Dee began a journey inward, one that would lead her to discover an entirely new calling beyond acting. It began subtly. In moments of loneliness and quiet, she found herself drawn to the idea of energy, emotion, and the unseen power that connects all living beings. "I realized I'd spent my whole life trying to be what others wanted me to be," Dee once said. "It was time to figure out who I really was." This introspection led her to study energy healing, spiritual psychology, and self-empowerment. Slowly, she began to heal from within, and as she did, her outlook on life transformed. Dee's home became a place of peace and purpose, filled with crystals, books on consciousness, and journals overflowing with affirmations. What started as a personal quest soon evolved into a mission to help others. She began hosting small workshops and online sessions, sharing lessons on love, intention, and the power of self-belief. Her message was simple but powerful. Healing begins when you stop waiting for others to fix you and take control of your own energy. Her transformation didn't go unnoticed. Fans who remembered her from E.T. were surprised to discover this new side of her, a spiritual teacher who radiated calm and wisdom. In interviews, Dee spoke openly about how her greatest pain had become her greatest teacher. "Losing Chris broke me," she said, "but it also broke me open." That honesty resonated deeply with people who were struggling with grief, loss, or simply the emptiness that comes from losing oneself in the chaos of life. Despite her new path, acting never fully left Dee's life. She continued to appear in smaller films and television projects, but now she approached her roles differently. "Every character I play," she explained, "is a reflection of energy. I look for what they're trying to express, love, fear, anger, and I channel that truth." This renewed approach gave her performances more depth than ever before. Even in horror films, the genre that had once defined her, she began to see beauty in transformation and survival. Dee's relationship with her daughter Gabrielle also blossomed during this time. Gabrielle, inspired by her mother's strength, pursued her own career in acting and writing, eventually becoming a successful author and filmmaker. The bond between them became unbreakable, built not only on love but on mutual understanding and shared healing. In many ways, Dee's spiritual growth healed not just herself, but her entire family. But it wasn't all peace and light. As Dee's message spread, critics questioned her credibility, labeling her beliefs as Hollywood mysticism. Yet Dee remained undeterred. She responded to skepticism with grace, saying, "If something brings healing and joy, then it's real enough for me." She knew that the same industry that once typecast her as the loving mother now struggled to understand a woman who had outgrown its labels. By the late 2010s, Dee Wallace had become both an unlikely spiritual guide and a symbol of personal reinvention. She wrote several books, including Bright Light, which chronicled her journey through fame, loss, and awakening. Readers were stunned by her vulnerability. This was no polished celebrity memoir. It was a roadmap for anyone trying to reclaim their own power after life's tragedies. Through workshops, podcasts, and speaking tours, Dee continued to touch lives across the world. She taught people how to harness their inner energy, how to let go of fear, and how to embrace joy without apology. In one emotional interview, she said, "I used to think my greatest role was in E.T., but now I know. My greatest role has been becoming myself." From the outside, it might seem that Dee Wallace had drifted far from the Hollywood spotlight that once defined her. But in truth, she had found something far more enduring than fame: peace. Her story became a testament to how pain can transform into purpose, and how even after the credits roll, a soul can still shine brighter than ever before. Today, Dee Wallace stands as a living example of strength born from struggle, a woman who turned every heartbreak into wisdom and every disappointment into purpose. While many remember her as the tender mother from E.T. or the fearless survivor in Cujo, the truth of her legacy goes far beyond the screen. Dee's story isn't just about fame or fear. It's about transformation. It's the story of a woman who faced unimaginable pain, yet refused to let it define her. In her later years, Dee found an extraordinary balance between the life she once led and the life she built afterward. She still appears at fan conventions where audiences line up to meet her, not just to talk about her movies, but to thank her for her message of empowerment. Many fans confess that her words have helped them through depression, loss, or self-doubt. Dee listens to every story with genuine care, often embracing strangers like old friends. Her compassion radiates from her, as if the same love she once portrayed on film had become a living energy she now shares with the world. When asked if she misses her Hollywood days, Dee often smiles softly. "I never left," she says. "I just changed what Hollywood meant to me." To her, acting is no longer about fame or recognition. It's about connection. Every character she plays now serves as a reflection of the emotional truths she spent years exploring in her own life. Even small roles in independent films have meaning, as she infuses them with depth and heart. She no longer chases success. Instead, she attracts opportunities that align with her purpose. Dee's home life is calm and centered. She enjoys spending time with her daughter Gabrielle, who often credits her mother as her greatest inspiration. The two collaborate on creative projects and occasionally appear together at events, symbolizing the power of family and healing. Dee has also found peace in simple pleasures, meditation, nature walks, and quiet mornings spent journaling. "The greatest gift I've given myself," she says, "is learning to be present." Though time has taken her far from the glitter of her early fame, Dee Wallace has never faded. In fact, she has evolved into something far more profound, a teacher, healer, and survivor whose influence reaches beyond the confines of Hollywood. She continues to write and speak about emotional freedom, the importance of self-love, and the power of positive energy. Her podcasts and seminars attract people from all walks of life, from fans of her horror films to those seeking hope after loss. The tragedy of Dee Wallace's story lies not in her career's decline, but in the pain she endured along the way, the heartbreaks that nearly broke her spirit, the personal demons she had to face alone, and the loss that changed her forever. But from those ashes rose a woman stronger than anyone expected. She didn't crumble under grief. She grew through it. And in doing so, she transformed her pain into purpose, her sorrow into strength. In interviews, Dee often speaks with gratitude rather than regret. "Every hardship gave me a gift," she once said. "Without the darkness, I wouldn't have found the light." It's this message that has defined the later chapters of her life. A belief that no matter what happens, we always have the power to choose how we respond. As she continues to inspire new generations, Dee Wallace remains a reminder that Hollywood fame is fleeting, but authenticity endures. Her journey, from small-town girl to global icon, from actress to spiritual teacher, proves that reinvention is always possible, no matter the odds. She may no longer dominate the big screen, but in the lives of those she's touched, her light shines brighter than ever, and perhaps that's the real ending to Dee Wallace's story. Not the applause of an audience, but the quiet, eternal impact of a woman who learned that true success comes not from fame, but from the courage to heal, to grow, and to love without fear.